Hey everybody, and welcome back to Nerd to the Third, episode 15, bringing you everything video games, movies, and nerd culture. Today we bring you the Power of Three with your hosts, Nick, Nate, and the ever-rotating third chair, the Master of Cases, Brett.
Hello.
Master of Cases sounds so much more epic than I
He's a master
intended.
caser.
Yeah, but see, nothing's quite as cool. The Master Caser. Nothing's quite as cool as Kingdom Hearts, though. You know, the Master of Masters. That's just you on a whole nother level, man.
Master.
Oh my god, don't get me started. I'm already getting anxiety leading up to 3 because I know I have to catch up on the story.
Wait,
As
I
you
really have
should.
to add quotes to
God.
that because story.
Well, yeah, because I mean it's got more of a story. It's got more of a concise story than Final Fantasy. That's an accurate statement.
Maybe as a
Yeah,
whole,
I
but
would agree.
Final
I would
Fantasy,
agree.
each individual one has a story all its own.
But we're gonna hit one fucking point where they're all together.
Oh,
like
then
it's
they-
all
You think
gonna
so?
be-
They're all
that
just
may
inner.
happen.
Wait, are you telling me that it becomes High School Musical fantasy?
Dude, what if in Kingdom Hearts 3 there's a High School Musical
God.
world? Oh my
God.
god.
I was worried
see,
about
then
Star
maybe you have
Wars
like a
and
little mini game where you have to do like dancing
the
and stuff.
Marvel.
Together.
All right,
no.
so a little grinding before we get started here. Make sure to go to our Twitter at TX3 Productions on Twitter or ThreatX3 Productions on Facebook. You can also join our Discord, which will be in the description down below. And today we obviously have Brett. Brett, go ahead and let them know where they can find you.
Yeah, sure. You can find the Triangle Squared podcast and anything we do under our Nartech Gaming. We like narwhals a lot. So Nartech Gaming umbrella. You can find us on Twitter at Triangle SQRD for the podcast. You can find us on Facebook at Triangle Squared, a PlayStation podcast. It's a group. Of course, you can go to our Discord as well. I don't know if y'all want me to send that, but we have a crazy Discord.
Nice.
A bunch of stuff goes on. And that's about it. So, or if you want to find us on Patreon and support us, if you go over and like what we do, or if you like my not so smooth voice, you can do what you want to.
Sweet. So thank you for joining us today.
I believe in bodily autonomy. Yeah, you're welcome, man. Thanks for inviting me.
So like let's just jump into it. Am I right? I don't know. There's just some things that, what really pushes my buttons.
Go pushes your buttons, Nick.
Okay, gotta back up. 100 gigs! So, 100 gigs for Red Dead Redemption.
I thought you had a seizure there for a minute. I was
Yes, I'm having
like, you
Oh,
okay?
man.
difficulties with my net.
Okay, legitimately, I was like, is he having... Is his internet freezing? Like, what is going on?
I thought you were spazzing. Like you were so mad that you were just
100
lost the
gigs
ability
for
to speak.
Red Dead Redemption and Black Ops 4. Red Dead Redemption, like I'm gonna be honest with you, I'm not that surprised. I mean, this is after all like I almost said steady. This is a Rockstar, so it's like 100 gigs. That doesn't really, like, if you look at GTA right now, I'm pretty sure they're over 100 gigs with how many updates they've had and stuff like that. So, like, this being the next Rockstar and being technically the first original, like, built from the ground up on the next gen, that doesn't surprise me too much. But, like, correct me if I'm wrong, 100 gigs for a Call of Duty game? Like, I don't know, that's super weird for me.
Well, so 100 gigs for a Call of Duty game with no campaign.
Yeah, so a way to put that, though, into perspective, actually, is when you look at it, so typically, a Call of Duty game will have a campaign. So the campaign obviously has some bearing on how big the game ends up being, but primarily what ends up pushing them so high, because actually if you look at the history of how they are, Black Ops 3 broke 100 gigs. I think Infinite Warfare got very close to 100 gigs by the time it was said and done.
Yeah.
But there's that. Now, of course, the fact that this doesn't have one is interesting, but it does have new stuff that's trying to compensate, which I don't quite agree that it is doing. I feel like this should be a $40 release, but they're not going to do that, so it doesn't matter. But also, more importantly, if you go and look at the PlayStation Store page for it, they finally updated it to where it shows you the size. And even though the pictures that we've gotten of the case show the 100 gigs, and that's where we got that information from, the PlayStation Store size actually calls for about 43 gigs and for the normal version and like 44.17 or something for the deluxe version. So it looks like maybe the 100 gigs is trying to be an automatic buffer to give people either an idea that they need this much room to enjoy the content at its latest and fullest.
So
I'm not quite sure DLC? Because yeah, and the reason I kind of think about it is that they may be trying to advertise it that way, sort of like whenever you have a system and you install your operating system on it. The operating system actually doesn't take as much room as they call for. It's like a buffer that they leave so that whenever certain updates and stuff happen, they can kind of hit into that buffer, but then if it needs more, it can go into your hard drive. Hard to say. It could be that. It could be that they're just trying to prep, or there could be some very odd reason that I don't understand, that there's no reason I can believe that the physical version would need to be that big. And if it was, it would actually need to be across more, because you're really pushing the boundaries of the Blu-ray at that point,
So just for clarification, as of right now, with the latest update that's downloading to my PlayStation as we speak, they're sitting at about 66 or 67 gigs for GTA 5. But you got to keep in mind, though, a lot of that is because of the textures and other things that were already in there were from the PS3.
Yeah, and I think
these are built from the ground up for next generation, for Red Dead.
So that's kind of what I was trying to hit on. It's like, it doesn't surprise me that much when it's Red Dead Redemption. It's an open freaking world. And if we take...
When you tell me that the horse's testicles expand and detract with the weather, yes, I expected that. The next day, the news was the game's going to be 100 gigs.
Exactly.
Like, that makes sense.
And so, but then Black Ops.
Who do you think is that one?
If you take the blackout map or whatever, you'd have to times that probably by 100, 200, maybe even 300 to get the same size as Red Dead Redemption. So it's like, where are all those freaking gigs coming from? And it's like at the end, after they've had all their DLCs, that would make sense. But like, if that's where we're starting, like, that's a lot. Not everybody got like the slim version that comes with a terabyte of gigs. I still got my 500 gig hard drive. So 100 is a fifth of that. And that's obviously not including the OS or whatever, the operating system.
So here's, you actually have... instead of 500 gigs, you actually have like 430.
Yeah.
So the thing that is in the more pushes my buttons territory is because I really honestly think we're going to see a PS5 update or PS5 reveal next year.
So? Okay.
With how many rumors are churning out, I think we're going to hear it soon. But if these next generation of consoles don't come out of the gate with 2 terabyte hard drives, then like it's you're just kind of slapping me in my face, because I got a Pro for Christmas last year and it's a terabyte, and I'm having to delete games as we speak just to play. Like, I had to delete games to put Horizon on there, and then now, granted, it was a lot of junk that I wasn't playing right then and there, but it's like, I don't want to have to spend, like, I'll do it because I have it for my my PlayStation at my desk. I've got a 2 terabyte external, and I'll do that, but an external is also
just one more thing,
and I don't want to break into my console because I'm going to avoid the warranty.
I think the biggest thing that pushes my buttons, especially about this, is I did a video about this. So if you ever watch YouTube, I did a my opinion. What's
YouTube?
Shut up. I did this video about why I thought GameStop is dying. And so one of the main factors for me personally, maybe not like factually why it's dying, but for me, why it died for me was that when I got my PlayStation, even if I have a physical copy of the game, I still have to download like the entire freaking game onto my console. So it got to this point where it's all like, what's the point of having a physical copy? And so for me, it's like I kind of weighed the options, and I'm like, okay, do I really need a physical copy cluttering up my thing? And so like that was my personal reason for switching to digital. It's just like, well, I have to download this giant ass game anyway, so why not just save some room on my thing? And game sharing.
Well, you know what's interesting about that? You are partially right. I mean,
okay.
we do know for a fact
this is not triangle squared, sir.
Who know? Anyway, GameStop is obviously somehow being adversely affected by the move towards more digital. So that's true. And of course, that's going to affect their business. And you see that in the fact that they're retaliating by trying to get people to buy digital games from them, either from their website or from the store, which is a very interesting way to go about it. But the other side, I think, about the argument about why do you need to have the physical disc? And it's something that a lot of people don't think about, and a lot of people may not care in the long run. But inevitably, when either PlayStation as a company stops being around, which I obviously hope never happens, either when that happens or when the PlayStation 4 and 3 get old enough that keeping server support for them is no longer very feasible, then what happens when they close the servers down? Because the way a digital game works, and there's potential ways that they could work this out, but would they do that? And can they do that? I don't quite know. But, at least on paper, when you think about it, it's like, well, they should be able to do this. When you buy a digital game, you're essentially buying a license. That license has to renew every certain number of things. So what happens is buying digital basically assumes that you have internet connection. At some point when you don't have an internet connection, that license will expire. And you'll notice it definitely for PS Plus games. Whenever you log back in, if you ever go and look through your PS3 download list or your Vita download list, where it's a little, it's not through a library, and it organizes based off of the renewal of or the purchase of the license, then games that you got for free in 2011 will suddenly move back to the top because their license is renewed. So what happens when there's no longer a server for a license to be pushed back through and renewed on? Do you suddenly lose access to those games? If the server is not up for you to download them and you didn't have room for them on your console and you want to go back and play them, now you can't download it or your license is invalid. So now the only way to play it, even if you have to insert the disc and let it install again, 20 years down the road, if I say, you know what, I love the God of War on PS4, and I just want to play it again because I just have that yearning to do so, I can just go put the disc in and it'll install, and it won't, even if they don't have a server, no updates will happen, but that's fine. The game is playable from the disc, and that, it's one of those interesting things, and that's why I'm glad that most games ship okay on the disc these days, even though they have the ability to post to patch later. So that's one of the reasons why I continue to go physical, outside of the fact that I'm just a collector. But that's something that I think a lot of people don't think about. But if the day came that ever happened, I think that a lot of people would be bummed, because at that point you don't actually own the game. You own the license for as long as they feel like is worthy to continue renewing it for you.
My main argument
I'm actually
against that, at least why I like make it okay in my head, is a lot of the games you do have to have some type of online access. And so like even like playing, like even if like let's put Call of Duty on the examination table, if I want to play Call of Duty Black Ops 3 but I only want to play Zombies offline or the campaign offline, if I don't have it hooked up to the internet, you can't even play it. So True. And of course that is certain games, because obviously certain games like God of War, I don't even know, like if you didn't do the update, that is definitely a good example of one that like you can just go ahead and play.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of the single player games, so definitely exclusives, and I think that the games that tend to be remembered very well tend to be single player anyway. A lot of the times, I mean, Red Dead will obviously have its online component, but I think that it's going to be remembered more for the fact of how good people thought that the single player component is. Grand Theft Auto is an outlier in that, because a lot of people really Grand Theft Auto did not get as big as it did this generation, becoming the best selling game ever, without having that online mode that definitely kept it pushing and kept people buying it, despite the fact that it's still the same price and has never dropped. But that's an outlier, and I think a lot of the times people go back and they look at games as single-player experiences, be it third-party or first-party, though a lot of them will end up being, third-party can kind of be handled differently, but first-party, you do only have a chance to play it on one, so if you move to a different ecosystem later on, you may not even have the ability to play that exclusive anyway.
Yeah.
It gets interesting, but there's definitely reasons to keep physical. It's just, like you said, you do have to do this kind of mental weighing system where it's like, how much do I care about that, and how much do I really see myself wanting to play that game 15 years from now? And
in all actuality, I have, like, I thought of this as a joke just now, but I think I could see it happening. I think that if games continue to grow as rapidly and as expansively as they are, like prime example, I'm expecting Cyberpunk 2077 to be in this same boat or of this same like story of it
yeah.
being 100 gigs. But
Oh, yeah.
I think I could totally, before this came, like after this came out, I could totally see Red Dead saying, "Hey, as a pre-order bonus, you get a coupon for a external hard drive," and I think that would be totally okay.
Really cool,
honestly, because that would actually give you a pre-order bonus that is useful.
You want
a
statue
skins are great.
that you'll just put up on
Weapons
your
are great.
shelf and it'll gather dust, or do you want an
Hey, for the record, I really did want that Cade 6 one, but I just never got it.
Sorry.
Despite the fact that Destiny 2 was mildly disappointing.
God,
I
you
still
must
have
be
the
a
Cade.
fanboy.
Well, from what I hear, Forsaken is digging it
Oh, I'm not.
completely out of its grave.
I haven't even
right?
played it since launch. Played it, did the raid, and was like, okay, well, this still has the same problem as the first game. There's not enough to do. Bye.
I just have to give you a hard time.
I was
about
so close to the
mildly.
platinum
It's
and
not
just quit.
mildly. It is profusely.
Okay, look, but it was still fun. I mean, it's hard to argue that the game is not a well-made, fun game. It could be made better, and it's got some design problems of where they put focus, but, you know.
So the main thing with, like, not to get into it, obviously, but the biggest thing that's damning for them is, why did Destiny 2 come out the way that Destiny 1 did? Why is it in the second time in a row we've got a Taken King situation?
It's because
like,
of viewers like
thing
you.
For Destiny 3.
You keep going out and you keep buying stuff regardless of how crappy it is.
Hey, no,
I know.
Talk to
I'm
Jeff
not
about that.
saying you
That's
as
not me.
in Nate. I'm just saying viewers like you. People who go out there and they just shrill out bullshit. You know, like the people who went out and bought Battlefront 2 are the exact same people who would buy like Destiny 2. And they're just like, why is my game starting to suck? I'm so confused. And it's like,
well, now say I will say that I am part of the problem to an extent this year with Black Ops 4 because I'm a collector like you, Brett, and the only way I was going to get that Steelbook that wasn't completely ridiculous is through GameStop's Pro version that came with the season pass, which is basically the hardened edition but came with a couple more stuff, and it's $120. And so I was like, well, I'm going to play the content anyway and I want the Steelbook, so I'm going to go ahead and get that. And they actually called me. GameStop called me and was like, "Hey, just letting you know," which is interesting. They're giving it away at 9 now.
My
like,
word.
Yeah, they've been doing that for over a year now.
Time
but
for
he
you
was
to
like,
download it.
I guess so. But he was like, you put 10 down on it. You still owe like 120, and I'm like, I really wish I would have got that through Best Buy, but I can't.
Mm-hmm.
So I am part of the problem in that sense. I'm going to drop $130 on a game that I'm fairly certain is going to be great, but there's always a chance that something could go wrong.
The way I
personal value
make
is
it
a weird
okay
thing.
in my head is that I'm not really buying it for multiplayer. I'm buying it for zombies, and Treyarch is zombies. So like that's my differentiator right there. It's like I'll play the maps, but it's like what I really am gonna grind is zombies and Blackout. Nobody gives a fuck about multiplayer at this point.
Yeah, it's really odd because my Call of Duty history, and I'm definitely an outlier in this. No, I'm not too outlier. I do know a lot of people that are like this, that only buy Call of Duty for its story mode and campaign. Now, actually, I skipped that for a while because they started getting very repetitive, like all of the Modern Warfare through Modern Warfare 3, where they all ended with like whoever was supposed to be your friend betraying you and you on the ground about to die, and then you do something to kill them. It got annoying. It was like, okay, why is every game ending the same way? But, you know, I instead finally jumped back on whenever, and again, I am an outlier in this, Infinite Warfare. The trailer, everybody else hated it. I was like, oh, this looks decidedly Killzone-like, which is cool because I don't care about World War II at all, and I've played 80 million hyperbole, but still World War II games, and they've made more World War II games than there can ever be room for enough across every console generation. So if you like it that much, my biggest problem is why is it always Doomsday and storming Normandy Beach? It's like, do something different. Play as somebody else.
World War II was like actually, it wasn't as good as Infinite Warfare. Infinite Warfare, I still say, is one of Call of Duty's best campaign experiences.
Oh yes,
that was
for
fantastic.
A number of reasons.
But
yes.
World War II's was actually like cinematically really good, and also was very poignant. I mean, when spoiler alert for a game that came out 2 years ago, when the ending of the game is you walking through a Nazi concentration camp, and like you can't shoot, you can't do anything, your weapon's down, it's making you see everything that's going on.
Sure,
it's like, wow, you had an effort to put this in here.
Yeah, and you know what's funny is that the same basic idea that they were going for in Modern Warfare 2 whenever they had the intro that I can't remember the name of it right now. But the intro where you went through the airport and you were... Yeah,
no Russian.
Yeah, I actually, I get why some people would want to skip that, but I was like, that actually made this far more powerful. And everything else you do in the game is affected by the fact that you were affected as the player by having to do that. And definitely because the game, like, you can technically get through it without doing anything, but you still have to witness it no matter what happens. Like, you're going to be somehow involved with this tragedy. It kind of
makes you want to save the world because you in part were responsible for the event that happened.
Modern Warfare 2 I think was probably one of the best campaigns.
Modern Warfare 3 is kind of underrated. There is a lot of cool stuff. There is a lot of really good things about Modern Warfare 3, in particular just the whole soap situation.
Did you drop it?
Yeah.
And that yeah, I did. No, but I will say that, like, yeah, Modern Warfare 3 was kind of by the books, whereas 1 and 2 were a lot better, but I still had a good time with it.
I mean, yeah, I could see that.
I had better experiences. I liked Advanced
Warfare.
But
that 100 gigs,
actually,
right, guys?
I liked Advanced Warfare a lot.
Yeah, that 100 gigs.
We lost the forest for the trees on that one, guys, but that's okay.
I was trying to make a Call of Duty joke, but I couldn't in there.
But yeah, I mean, that's obviously what we think. I mean, what do you guys think about the situation? 100 gigs. How many? Like, this is a genuine question I would like to know. How many games are you gonna have to delete in order to actually, like, download one of these? And not only that, but then think about it, what if you want to get both games? That's another thing. Like, oh my god. So let us know. You can comment down below, or you can go to TX3 Productions on Twitter or ThreatX3 Productions on Facebook. Let's get to our new segment. Since we don't have Weekly Grind, we're trying to make a couple of more different discussion segments. So our next one is lists. All right, on lists, we're going to do lists. So today, I thought would be a really cool thing to talk about. We just got a leak that Harry Potter is going to be having its own little standalone game. It's going to be set like hundreds of years, like even before Dumbledore. So it's going to have its very own story to tell. And so I thought a really cool list might be, what other franchise, and it doesn't have to be superhero or anything, just what other franchise, period, could use a Arkham or Spider-Man or Harry Potter treatment, that they could have their own story. It's attached to the universe, just like Arkham and Spider-Man. Obviously, it's attached to the franchise, but it's also able to sort of do their own thing. So
yeah. That was cool. We did it at the same time. Go ahead and finish what you were going to say.
Let's get going.
Okay. Before we get started, for anyone else who's listening who has seen that clip from a while back ago of the Harry Potter hand puppet things,
Snape.
We'll get why I laughed whenever he said
Snape.
Whenever he said Dumbledore. Dumbledore. He said that, and I was like, just started laughing.
Harry Potter. Ooh, Harry Potter. Harry Potter. Oh my god. Yeah.
Anyway, let's get started.
All right, so let's try to get maybe around 5 or something like that. Let's talk about, like, what other franchise would be really good for an Arkham / Spider-Man / like Harry Potter. Like something that is, I guess, another good way to put it. Arkham and Spider-Man are both, they are their characters, but then Harry Potter is so far attached where it's still the universe, but it's not. So it's like those are.
It's an experience you haven't experienced.
So, like, which those two, and it could be either one. It could be the actual character, or it could be so far removed that it's, able to do its own thing. So, let's go down the rabbit hole and figure out exactly, like, what would be really good.
So, are we basically asking, like, what franchises deserve the going into an IP and treating the IP with respect as a game instead of just doing a cheap licensed game? I think I have a very
Go
good
for it.
starting answer. I'm curious as to what your guys' start on it. Avatar: The Last Airbender.
Okay.
It's a series that I think makes total sense as a game, and it's only been given like very small. And it was funny because the developer behind it was Platinum, which if you asked me who a great developer for a game like that would be, I think
Half
Platinum
the
would be a
time,
great
yes.
answer. But it was not a good game. So I mean, and it was exactly what we're talking about. It was them getting an IP and then not treating it with any real.
It was
respect.
very
And
90s in the
it was,
sense that it's like, you know, they took it and they just were trying to make a game. They weren't trying to move any type of envelope at all.
No,
Yeah,
not at all.
Avatar would make
yeah.
a perfect RPG style game nowadays.
Maybe
yeah.
even something of like an Avatar like MMO or something. So you could be an airbender, you could be a firebender or something like
Yeah.
that. I mean, I think that
Yeah.
maybe not even MMO necessarily, but kind of maybe the way that Harry Potter's looking in the sense that it's going to be an open world RPG. And so something like that, but in the Avatar universe might also be kind of cool.
Yeah, though I do think the DCUO treatment would work for it, which is going towards the MMO route, and letting you start off and go, okay, well, what nation do you want to be from? That will obviously influence what. And really, they could separate it where it's like you start in whatever nation you want, but you can also choose whatever bending you want to start off, or they could time to where if you start in the water nation, of course you're going to be a water bender. But I think there's a lot of ways to play off of that, and the way it would probably work more to just let people start where they want to start and let you become a bender of where you want to be. That way you can still all easily group up with friends without having to traverse across the entire map just to get to each other, which is a problem that Guild Wars 2 had, where you could start massively different ways from each other. And so if just because you wanted to play with each other, you had to like play a bunch by yourself just to get to each other. But I think it works for I'm not going to say Skyrim, but a Skyrim / Witcher style, very big open world where you just give me powers and I run out and I do side quests and stories. And of course, you can move through the arc of if it's going to be a single player game where you are the avatar and you start the game off learning. You could always go that route, and then you could go through the game, and some of the big moments could be you going through and doing things that help you train to master certain bending so that you can become the avatar you need to be. Or you could even do it where it's more like, okay, well, this is somebody who's already been an avatar for a while. So I think that the challenge on the game side of that would obviously be trying to figure out how to make progression feel rewarding. Because if you're starting from scratch, it's kind of like Infamous Second Son, where when you would actually pull somebody else's power in, it makes sense. You just got it. You're not familiar with it. So as you play and you progress with it, you can unlock more ways to make yourself better at that. And I think that would work in the same sense.
Yeah.
You'd be able to move through it that way.
I just thought of a really good one, The Matrix. Now we've already obviously had Matrix games, but Enter the Matrix was from Naomi and Ghost's perspective. It wasn't
awful.
I liked it for
great
its
either.
bullet times and stuff like that. And then I want to say Matrix Path of Neo. Obviously, that was the Path of Neo, so that was straight up just the movie. I think a really good one would be The Matrix, and then obviously the architect mentions how there's been many the ones before, so maybe we get one of those stories where it's like we get the story of one of the ones that came before you.
Maybe, and I think that's interesting because one of the biggest pulls about The Matrix, definitely the first movie, is this weird ploy between trying to tie, and it would definitely make fun mechanic-wise, because we've seen other games do this recently with like Titanfall 2 and even Dishonored 2, where you can pull between being in one, like you're in The Matrix, and then you can pull out, I guess even Assassin's Creed-like, where you pull out into the real world, in the real world you're going through your stuff. And I think that you could obviously weave a cool storyline with that, which would make even more sense than what I felt like Assassin's Creed was trying to do. So I mean, I think that would actually be a really cool one. It's funny that all of these also make sense as an MMO in my head for some reason. I don't know why.
They did have an MMO Matrix or whatever, but I mean, we're talking like early 2000s MMO, and I mean, it was not. I mean, it very well might as well have been EverQuest with how like bad it looked and its interactivity and stuff.
Hey, you do not disrespect EverQuest. It is the crown achievement of MMOs and got us where we are with MMOs to this day, sir.
Yeah. See, I hear what you're saying, but then also I'm hungry, so
Yeah.
Tell me what to do. But yeah, I think Matrix, but you're a completely different character. You're far enough removed from Neo where it's like, but where's Neo in this timeline? Not having to worry about this, but also getting the powers of Neo because you are one of the ones. And so being able to do something like that, I think that would be really, really interesting. And as far as, even in the style of like Spider-Man, where it's a giant open world, like you have these really cool, like maybe traversal mechanics where like you can run up a building or you can jump from one building to another. But now you have guns and everything. Yep. And I think it could definitely be interesting if done right, which is obviously that's what we're going off of. We're assuming that they're all going to go right.
Yeah,
I've got a very cool mechanic idea in the Matrix game. When you go to pull up your inventory, instead of a weapon wheel, it's the room with all the weapons and
Dude,
like everything.
I was gonna say that. Yes, I was gonna say that. I was like, that would be so amazing, and it'd be visually spectacular. It'd look crazy in game. Like as soon as you hit pause, the racks just and fly up beside you.
That would be awesome.
Yeah.
Who knows, though? That may be a better on paper, but not quite as good in execution. Because you remember Fable 3 when they had it to where when you hit start, you'd go to like this room. It did not. It looked cool and it was a cool idea, but ultimately it made the game worse because I was like, I'm spending more time in the menus to do the same thing I was able to do like 4 times quicker in the old Fable menu system. So you run the risk of going both ways, but it would definitely be cool for a little while at least.
All right, so do we have another one? Nate, you haven't said one yet.
I'm trying to think.
Mine, the only one I can think of, and mine's kind of a cheat answer just because there's stuff that's in the works but we don't know anything about it. Okay. I'd probably say Star Wars. Now, to be fair, all of the Star Wars games that have come out, I don't think have been treated with any sort of disrespect. I think all but maybe a few have been really good and handled really well. But I think back to games like The Force Unleashed and how just fantastic it was, because it kind of nowadays it kind of feels like an Arkham or a Spider-Man thing we're talking about here. It's a universe that we know, but it's a story we've never heard before and treated with nothing but care. Yeah,
actually that is one of my biggest examples of how we have absolute unequivocal proof that Star Wars games can be done fantastically, and we don't quite get them that way. I mean, I'm not no hate on how Battlefront has ended up coming.
Plenty
out,
of hate.
Even though I didn't play the story of 2, it's just obviously still not enough. It's not exactly what people want. I mean, and applause to EA for still trying to support the game and doing what they're doing. And of course, enough people bought the game that they need to do that. Estimated they only lost about 1 million sales from all of the microtransaction debates and controversy. But that said, I mean, that's a great answer, man. Star Wars it's such a shame that the what was it, Star Wars 1313, is that what it's called?
Yeah.
Dude, that is funny because that's exactly what I wanted in a whole different sense. Now, of course, it looks like that's maybe kind of the direction that we're going with the we know the visceral one is not going to end up how
Jedi Fallen something. But that's why I said it was kind of a cheat answer, because we know that's coming.
Yeah, we just don't know. Respawn's working on. Yeah, absolutely.
But like I can probably count a handful of really bad Star Wars games, like apart from Battlefront, whatever. The problem with Battlefront 2 in particular, of course the new one, I'm not talking about the original, and it's something that me and Anthony from PS Best Friends have talked about multiple times on our other Star Wars podcast. Hello there. Is the fact that Battlefront 2 feels completely different from Battlefront 1. Battlefront 1 feels like a Star Wars sim. Like, it feels really cool. It feels arcadey. But something about the way that they designed Battlefront 2, it feels like a completely different game. Yeah,
like, so you're saying across like the DICE one? So from
the DICE
basically ones. The sequel, yeah. I didn't play 2. I did play 1, and 1 just didn't have enough to make it really seem worth it to me. And because I'm kind of a story snob, I really like stories, and since I didn't have it, I was like, well, I just don't care about multiplayer that much. I can't justify $60 on a multiplayer only experience. But that's interesting. I've not heard anybody say that.
Well, the star cards in particular, like the star card system in 1 is simple. Like, okay, I pick up this. When I first got into Battlefront 2 and started playing multiplayer, I'm like, I don't understand how these work. Like, I don't know what to do. And so I just kind of played just kind of like whatever I was given, and then I mostly just played hero stuff because it was the easiest to understand.
Yeah.
What about Supernatural? Something set in the supernatural universe, but maybe even play as like the Winchester dad, like as he's like, because then you can have that like God of War. You have to look after your sons, but you also have to go and hunt monsters.
So God of War / Tomb Raider hub world.
Yeah, that sounds like it would work, actually. I'm not a huge Supernatural fan, but I do know what you're talking about, and I know enough about it to be able to understand what you're trying to say. I think that would work. I think God of War was a great example of showing exactly what you're talking about, that you can use that parent thing, and of course, The Last of Us, the beginning of The Last of Us and all that stuff going through, you can utilize trying to play a parent in a very strong fashion for story purposes, so I think that would be really cool. And then mechanically, of course, too, because God of War did a lot mechanically with that. I actually like that, and of course, that was a source of contention across different people going on. Is Atreus going to be in your way? Is he going to be annoying?
Definitely.
And he never was. It actually really,
maybe
really
even you
surprised me.
could play as like the grandpa, because I know the grandpa comes from like another family of hunters. Or I mean, even then, like maybe it could be like Harry Potter, where it's far enough removed from supernatural, so you're just playing as a family, and maybe you have something similar happen where like a banshee comes and kills your mom or dad, and so then you start researching these things, but maybe having it like OG, like Assassin's Creed, where like you have the investigation phase, and then you have the like the hunting phase, and then you have like the killing phase or something like that. I think something like that, and maybe not open world necessarily, but maybe like I think something like BioShock, where each area is meant to be explored, and so having something like that, and so you're visiting like the backwoods of America, and so each one is basically a small town, and so you just go from like mission to mission that way, and there's like different things, and maybe it could even be like Dishonored, where you could take each situation on multiple ways so that it's replayable. Oh, there you go. Like Hitman. Exactly.
Yeah, that would be cool.
Yeah.
I think as far as the hunting goes, a good idea across that one. I don't know that I would go the Assassin's Creed route, because one of my biggest problems with the original Assassin's Creed, and they've started to ratify that with these newest games like Origins and then Odyssey moving forward with it, is that the Assassin's Creed games always did too much to take control out of your hand at the biggest moments. And it was like, I remember the first Assassin's Creed game, and even 2, it was still a problem, where you would go towards somebody that you're supposed to be assassinating, and like you don't get to choose how you assassinate them. You're just supposed to walk up to them, kind of, and then the game takes control, and it becomes a cutscene where you stab them and then hold them, and they give you exposition. And it may work as a story device, but it doesn't work as a game device because it's taking too much away from you. So I think if I was going to go a route, I like the idea of breaking it up where it's like you're looking for them and stuff.
The benefit
I assume did both of you play The Witcher?
Is that like each one has a different way of killing them. So like some, like werewolves are silver bullets, vampires are stakes. You know, certain ones you have to get like a goat horn and stab them, or so like each monster has a very different way of killing them, and so your job would be to investigate that, and then maybe go find that item, or find a black market merchant who will help you do it, and maybe he'll have you do like side missions for you to get that item, and then you go in for the hunt and the kill.
Well, that basically reinforces. But that basically reinforces. Well, I think The Witcher would be a good choice for that. When you're doing the Witcher contracts, where you're going out and hunting monsters, and you have to learn about what their weaknesses are. I think that's a good example of how to pull that one off.
Well, so real quick for clarification, you said the grandfather. You're not talking about Bobby, right?
Is that the bald guy, who is also the smoking man? Oh no, that's not the smoking man, but he is from X-Files.
So when do you meet the grandfather? Because I'm like season
I guess you haven't met the grandfather then.
Okay, I just want to make sure that was right. So something I want to bring up that's actually the opposite of what we're talking about is, speaking of Assassin's Creed, is the opportunity they had with the Michael Fassbender movie. So when that movie was coming out, I was very excited. A, because I love Michael Fassbender. B, just a shrill. Yes, because I'm a tool. One of the things I loved about the original Assassin's Creed, like 1 to Ezio to 3, and even to 4, is the present day stuff. I was very enthralled with the story of Desmond, and I liked where that was going. So to kind of have a real life motion picture depiction of something similar to that, I was like, oh, this is going to be cool. And just how much they dropped the ball on that is remarkably interesting, because any director who gets this, if I got that script, I would be like, okay, I would do this, this, and this with it. And it really just seemed like, hey, let's mention these things that people like in Assassin's Creed and show it to them, and then that's it. And then just show them something that happens in the past and have nothing make sense. I mean, don't get me wrong, I like it. It's entertaining. It's a good popcorn flick. But like that is an example of showing a IP disrespect. Because it was just like that story, to anyone who knows how to write or just is interested in stories, you have these people who have these machines that you can go into your ancestors' memories, and there's also this stuff with like artifacts and like Apple of Eden, Spear of Destiny, like occult items. People have done literally everything with that, and you do nothing with it. It's like,
well, it goes back to something I said as a problem in our most recent episode that's going to be up Monday. So
plug.
the 8th. But anyway, plug. Shameless. But it does really tie into the conversation, which is that the biggest problem with movies and turning games into movies is that there are people who have vested interest in terms of the money that they're putting in and the fact that they are financing it. There's people who are worried about getting the right actors in so that it will do the most money that it can. And it may be actors that don't even want to do the job, but they're doing it because they're getting enough money. So that reflects on how they portray the character, how much they care about the character. That goes on to who they get to write the script, whether the script writer cares about, Assassin's Creed as a video game, whether or not they're getting pressure from the people who are going to distribute the movie to make sure that this does this so that they get the biggest maximized potential for return. And it's the problem of business, because my basic example was like the Uncharted short that came out on YouTube that featured Nathan Fillion. Did you all watch that?
Yeah,
and it was great, right?
Yes.
And you know why it was so great? No one had vested. Yeah, exactly. No one had vested interest. I'm pretty sure, and definitely when you see how excited Nathan Fillion was about being able to be Nathan Drake, who since the first game I have said, oh my God, please let Nathan Fillion be Nathan Drake.
Well, see, I said that until I saw him in Santa Clarita Diet recently. I'm like, man, he got fat. And then I saw him as Nathan Drake.
But he worked out as Nathan Drake, did he not?
He did. No, yeah, he looked great, yeah.
Yeah, and it worked out, and it actually told the story of where I actually think the story of 4 makes more sense as a movie than it does as a game, weirdly enough. I think the rest of it's still a good game. I enjoyed it, but it is what it is. But that's my point, is that was a passion project. Nobody had to worry about the money. Somebody paid for the stuff that they did, but it was people who paid because no worry about what they were going to get back from it. It was just about making sure that this was as good as it could possibly be, and you had actors that also cared about that, and you had people who understood what Uncharted is, and they understood the tone, and that they just tried copying that and making a purely original story disconnected from the rest of the games. It has nothing to do with that. It's more about what these characters are, what purpose they serve, so you can write around that and you understand the basics of who they are and what they do in the story, and then you know what the tones the story is trying to have, which is like an action flick where all this crazy stuff's going on, but it's intriguing, and then you have that really seriously, emotionally weightful moment where it's like, oh my God, what's he going to do? And that's that, and it was perfect, and that's why I think that Hollywood movies, the only example of a movie, and it got a little bit of backlash, but I think one of the only examples of a video game movie that I have enjoyed really and truly was Silent Hill, the original Silent Hill. I feel like it basically understood the tone of what Silent Hill is. It wasn't trying to just copy the script, and it was like, we know what we're kind of working with, and we're going to try and do it as close to what we can as we can. It didn't worry about having the biggest named actors or anything. It just got people that they thought would be able to pull it off, and I actually enjoyed it. It's not
I actually
a perfect
really
movie,
liked it.
but it's enjoyable.
I thought, at least on how they portrayed the movie, it was very much like, I want to say the first 2 acts were actually very faithful to like what I remember of Silent Hill. It wasn't until the 3rd act that they're
and again, part of it is the idea.
Let's go a different way over here. And so that's the only time it falters. But even then, I feel like the changes they made still made sense in their universe. It wasn't so out. Yeah, it wasn't so
in
out
the context.
Yeah. But hey, since we brought up Nathan Fillion, what about a Firefly game?
Boy, I'm glad that you said that because I think Firefly would be a perfect game series.
Maybe
Space Untold.
Well, yeah, right.
It's exactly what I want.
I just lost her name. What's the girl who has the, she can kick ass and stuff? River, jeez,
River
I wanted to say Sky for some reason.
Oh, yeah,
I don't know why.
yeah.
Anyways, okay, so River, so maybe
That's from Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D..
pre-River. So they're still outlaws, they're still doing whatever the hell they want, because obviously once River came up, they still, obviously pulled off jobs or whatever, but, it was very much more about,
of course, yeah.
Her struggle and stuff like that. Even the movie, obviously, was 100% about her.
Serenity
so
is
like
so
if we
good.
have the chunk before her, and so we get to maybe see their story, and then it's far enough detached from like even the series itself, where like we could go on these really cool adventures and get to know them.
Absolutely, that's a great answer.
Unfortunately for me, I'm going to on all of this right now. Because much as I love Firefly, this actually came into conversation about like the Marvel games. Is I think a parallel that would still fit in the same thing would be a Guardians of the Galaxy game.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Actually, I mean, Guardians of the Galaxy is basically Marvel Firefly.
Yeah.
In so many ways. It's obviously it's a little more grandiose.
If you look at the movie, the comic book's not not so much, but the movie for sure is pretty much Firefly.
Well, so mine might be too comparable to the one that you said, but what about a kind of mystery game involving either Riverdale or Scooby-Doo, like a modern day version of that?
No.
I would need to watch more Riverdale to figure out where they go on that. There's something about the way Riverdale's
I have
working
not personally watched Riverdale, and I'm not super... I'm intrigued with the terrifying or the something with the new Sabrina. They're doing the exact same thing where they're making it super dark and brooding or whatever.
No, but Sabrina looks super like messed up.
And
it actually looks dark in a better way. Something about Riverdale just comes off as like, and don't get me wrong, I'm an emo through and through.
Well, so the reason why I said Riverdale is because they are turning the Archie series into a more like each season is a mystery that they're trying to solve. Now, since neither of you have really gotten into
reasons.
When Riverdale season 1 came out,
reasons.
For reasons. When Riverdale, I thought you said freeze, and I stopped. When Riverdale season 1 came out, my wife and I were watching it, and we were like 3 episodes in, and I turned to her and I said, "This show is so bad that I can't stop watching."
So it was a Walking Dead situation.
It's not.
Call back.
Well, no. It's not that it was actually really bad. It's not that it was actually really bad, but I was sitting here going like, I see kind of where they're going with this. Like, this is very on the nose, but I can't stop watching it. And then it got way better than that later.
How do you get Archie comics and they're like, you know what? It would be the best way to adapt this. Let's make it a dark, brooding, totally effed up like teen drama. Like, how does that even happen? Sabrina, now here's the one reason why Sabrina at least intrigues me, is because Sabrina was always about being a witch. And so turning something about witches into something dark and broody, it makes sense. But Riverdale is about teenagers.
Yeah, sure.
So turning like High School Musical into Repo Man 20... or Repo Man the Musical is two completely different things.
Okay, I guess take away Riverdale then. But I say Scooby-Doo because I recently kind of dredged up some
Telltale gonna do this?
Great old.
They're not going to do anything.
I was actually they're not going to do anything. I was actually thinking more not. My first thing I was thinking of was Until Dawn.
Okay, yeah. I got you.
But maybe less in a heavy rain kind of story aspect. Like the way it kind of is, but maybe not the whole game is like a 6-hour long interactive movie. But I was thinking about Scooby-Doo because I went back and looked at some of the games that I used to love to play, like the Cyber Chase one.
Oh yeah,
on the PS1.
Hey, look, we were young, but they were fun in the thing. I do think that there's a reasonable way to go about making Scooby-Doo more mature, like not overly crazy, but you can definitely edge it up a little bit, bring it more towards being mature, and then you still have the ability to have Scooby be like the only thing is Scooby is the biggest point of like, he would be good in terms of if you think about who the character is, like he would be, and what his purpose is he's comic relief, him and Shaggy. But how do you make a dog talking work in a game that's supposed to be mature? Well, and I mean,
I tell you exactly. Hold on. Sorry. I tell you exactly how you do. Kill two birds with one stone. You make him more mature by having Shaggy actually be a fucking pothead, and 2, have the main thing be that Shaggy is the one that can hear Scooby because he's so high, and then he ends up.
It only happens because of so he's basically hallucinating it.
But
I was going to say another take would be I would say the other side would be to somehow want to take it towards. I think The Wolf Among Us did a very good job of going in between, where they chose an art style and a reason behind the stuff that made it to where when you saw animals talking, it didn't feel weird, partially because of the art style. So don't go hyper realistic with your art. Try and give yourself a cool style that works so that when you see this dog talk, it doesn't feel so out of the blue. And I think another thing
that we're missing the note on is that, it could be the games that we're talking about can be like Arkham and Spider-Man, but that can also mean that they just treat the property good. It doesn't mean that it has to be like
that's what I'm aiming at with it.
So we can still have like a goofy Scooby-Doo game, but just done in the style of like reinventing. I guess that might be a better way to put it, is reinventing, because that's really what Arkham did for the Batman as a gaming series, and some might even say like as characters, because now like so many more people got a hold of him and started playing as Batman, but yet they were so faithful to it that it made it okay for those who have been around for a while.
Yeah, sure. Yeah,
everyone who knew. It's kind of the same way with Spider-Man too. Like if you know a lot of Spider-Man lore, you're like, oh, I get that. And, then you have some things that are very, and I think we'll probably talk about soon, that are just kind of egregious, where you're sitting there going, I literally know what's exactly about to happen. Yeah. Why are you cookie crumbing me?
So, I mean, I think that was 5. Yeah. That was about 5. Was it? It might have been more than 5. But still, that was a good list. A good list of games or franchises that we think could use an Arkham Spider-Man Harry Potter treatment. So if you guys have any more suggestions, go ahead and let us know. Heading up next, we're going to be having a nice open discussion. So everybody's going to have their own topic. So open discussions up next. All right. So there's a couple of topics we want to talk about here. Since we were kind of leaning into it already, let's go ahead and go with yours, Brett. So go ahead and introduce it.
All right. Basically, my topic was going to be, like he said, we've already kind of touched on it in some point. But when do developers basically start to take more chances with IPs that they get licensed out to them? Now, I think that we've seen some of this. So we saw it somewhat happen with Batman. One of my biggest things I love about Arkham City, and I specifically say Arkham City and not the whole franchise, because Arkham City did a good job of it does such a good job of foreshadowing, so that if you go back and as you know stuff, or if you have a really, really keen eye, you can kind of pick up on some things. But for the most part, you don't quite know what's going to happen in the game. Whereas I think that Spider-Man's falter was that I always felt like I knew what the next step was going to be. Some of it was because they were just blatantly throwing it in your face. But, Arkham City was a great example of being true to what you know from the series, but making sure that it wasn't so on the nose to something you've already seen that you can easily guess it. We talked about with Spider-Man and even Arkham Knight, both of those, they leaned too much on a specific source material, and then Arkham Knight made the fatal flaw of trying to hype up the Arkham Knight as this very, very specifically new character that they built from the ground up, and they made it seem like it was going to be that just to pull the curtain out from underneath us and it be somebody that would already existed in the universe. I won't say just in case for some reason you've not played Arkham Knight. But it was something that if you were a fan of Batman felt decidedly like, I knew this from a mile away. I knew it from when you announced it. I knew it from whenever I first saw them. It was just, it was a weird handling of it from a studio that otherwise had always handled the Batman thing, where they balance of making sure it feels true, but also feeling decidedly their own universe and like they were taking chances. So they've done exactly what I want more developers to do with IPs that are licensed, but they've also faltered in the same areas as others. So what do you guys think about that?
Well, so in reference to the whole Arkham Knight thing, I kind of briefed on this earlier. I wasn't the 1% that had no idea what was going on during the Arkham Knight. And like you said, I'm not gonna do spoilers, but I remember going like, oh, I wonder who that is. And then throughout the game, you have some flashback memory scenes, and I'm like, man, why are they showing a lot of this character? That's weird. And then when the reveal happened, I was like, oh, fucking duh. Like, I was like, that makes so much more sense. But now that I think about it, though, you're right. In retrospect, they really should have kept it as not even shown who the Arkham Knight was. Like, just not show the character at all and just have be Scarecrow.
And a lot of their
is the
marketing
main villain
actually was
and
talking
hype that
about
up.
how Scarecrow was going to be the main villain. So then for them to even
and he was
right,
mildly
exactly.
in the
So
game. I mean,
for them to market it so
little,
heavily as Arkham, or even to call it Arkham Knight, other than they wanted to have each one have the word Arkham in them, it's like that's the only reason. But yeah, like why market it that way? If anything, maybe that would have helped certain people not know what's coming. Because I'm definitely in the camp of the same camp as Brett, where I knew from the very beginning exactly who the Arkham Knight was going to be. And then, yeah, when you said those flashbacks or whatever, I was like, well, thanks for hitting me over the head with it. So, like, it wasn't clever.
Right.
It was just, like, beating me over the head. It's like,
Well, because the fact that there wasn't even any like Easter eggs from any of the other games about that character, like there wasn't like kind of how in Arkham City when you go to that one spot where there's the chalk outline of your parents where they died, and you have that like nice little moment. There wasn't anything like that. There wasn't any paper clippings or anything in the Batcave of
those
like
darn
memoriam
time jumps
kind of thing.
when they happen off camera.
It was a weird situation, but we definitely are in a so me and you, Nate, if I'm not mistaken,
I knew
you're the one who said you knew. Okay, yeah.
Nick.
So when you think about that, we're in the particular Nick. Okay, thank you. Anyway, Nick. With that, when we're in a predicament where basically we knew enough about the character that and enough about Batman as a whole, probably due to just outward interest outside of just the Arkham games, that's why it was so bad to us. So when it showed, if you take away that, when they showed the flashbacks, I get for people who had no clue that was an okay way to do that, because it felt true to try and explain to you how we led to this point, and it definitely, once they revealed who it was, as to why this stuff had happened, but at the same point, some of it wasn't explained good, even from a standpoint of somebody new. Like, they didn't explain enough about why Ra's was why the Lazarus pit is involved and all this stuff. But I think the other side of it is that regardless of people like us, the Arkham games are already big, and that they would obviously pull more people into Batman. So I think the other thing that was a disservice to exactly why they did that is that the Red Hood animated movie came out like 3 years prior, maybe a little bit longer than that. But what I mean is that it definitely lessens the blow when if you watched the animated movie and then you go in the game. If you didn't know going in, which it still should have been obvious, as soon as the first flashback happened, you would have been like, oh. It's a weird thing, and I had the same problem with Spider-Man, where as soon as the first scene where you see what's going on, you're like, well, I know how this game's going to end now. Go ahead. Oh, you're good. I don't want to go too far. Of course, talking about Spider-Man for spoilers is it's a very fresh game.
So I kind of want to slightly, just because I haven't beat the game, but I kind of do want to talk about the point that I'm at, just to kind of go what we're talking about. So I'm pretty sure the main thing you're talking about, and not towards the actual end of the game, but the one in particular I'm talking about is the interactions with your boss.
Yep.
That's all I'm going to say.
Yep.
And like, I'm with you. I kind of wish they would have went something original like that, but from what I've seen, and granted, I don't know how the game ends, I kind of feel like going forward, a superior Spider-Man story could be put into place just based on their interactions together.
Sure.
Because of how... Yeah. So, but when you go to the lab to like do certain things, and like there's one scene in particular where there's a item there, and you're like, hey, Doc, what's this? It's like, oh, that's blah, blah, blah. I'm like, well, I understand. It just felt so beating me over the head, and I know it wasn't trying to.
Yeah. There's no nuance. The game,
Yeah, there's really none.
Yeah, the game is very devoid of trying to give you the room as the player and the person experiencing it to kind of let yourself fall in there. That's why I say it's so predictable that while it's still a good story, it's so predictable that the lack of nuance makes it to where you almost care less. There's a couple of really strong scenes later in the game, and the pacing gets a lot better and doesn't drop as much as it does in the beginning parts of the game. But, I mean, honestly, I guarantee you, even though you're not at the end of the game, I guarantee you know how this game is going to end. I guarantee you could guess it right now. Now, we're not going to do that, but my point being is that if you even have a mild interest in Spider-Man, you know what's about to happen.
Well, so, go ahead.
No, that's it. That's good.
So I do see where you're saying, like, you can see where things are going. And this could be just me. Like, I guess I am naive when it comes to games, but when I finished Act 2, like when I'm playing Act 1, Act 2, I kind of got used to the routine of everything. I'm like, all right, this is, I'm doing this. Okay, this is fun, but I'm doing this again. When I finished Act 2 and, like, how I played after that, I was like, oh, okay, that's cool. It immediately just changed direction. Like, I didn't like how jarring it was, but at the same time, I liked it because it's like, oh, I feel like I'm playing a different game now.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember exactly where the place is at. But is it after the jail scene?
It's after the jail
That's what
scene.
I thought. No, you're right. That's where the game hits its stride. And even then, though, it hits its stride there, but it just makes you realize where the rest of the game kind of dropped the ball. And it's a very interesting thing because you don't get to spend enough time with the new villain setup. They spend too much time on one particular villain in the game. But that's not quite into the spirit of the discussion, I guess. I mean, maybe it is. Do you have a way that you're trying to tie that back in? I'm out of curiosity. I don't want to go too far outside.
So like to your comment of like it's predictable. Yes, it is, but I wasn't expecting that tonal change, that complete 180 after I got to that part, and so like. I'm excited to play more because I wasn't getting burnt out, but I was like, all right, I'm looking for something else just to kind of like play something different.
I do know what you're talking about though. Yeah, when that happens, you suddenly care. It's like, oh, I really want to play this game now. Like,
it gives me more immediacy. Like, whereas I'm like, I can press pause. I don't have to go talk to Aunt May right now. I can press pause in real life and then go do something else.
Absolutely.
But after that, I'm like, I have to do this now.
Yes. And you're right. And I wish the whole game had that because I do feel like. And this goes into more of like, again, it's taking chances and it's trying to figure out where it's at. And like one of the things Arkham City did so well is that you could immediately, the whole game had a sense of immediacy. And you could immediately go, and if you got a very sense of like urgency by your own, like by yourself, and you're like, oh man, I feel like I really want to go see what's going on next, you could go do it. There's a couple of times in the first couple of acts for Spider-Man where it's like, when I say they're trying too hard to be like, beat you over the head again with the fact that you're Spider-Man and you're supposed to go around and save the city and do a bunch of menial tasks. And I know that that's something that's very true to Spider-Man as a character, but it's not really fun as a game. So I feel like they were trying to take chances, but they were also trying to stay too true to Spider-Man in a way that they were trying to walk a tightrope that they just didn't quite hit right. And I feel like that's something that with a sequel will definitely be addressed because this is starting a game. But you always want that in a game. You want a pace that scales and continuously leaves you interested so that you don't want to stop. You don't want to hit start and be like, well, I'm going to go do this real quick because it doesn't really matter if I talk to her right now. This is unimportant. And another thing the game does is drops the ball on a timing thing where after something interesting happens and you should be able to just instantly go and feed your curiosity by going and seeing what's next about it, the game forces your hand to go, no, swing around and do a bunch of nothing, or just sit here for 5 minutes while this background timer that you don't get to see happens, and then we finally call you with where to go next.
See, I like that because I like it in the sense of it gave me actual time to go clean stuff up and do it like to where this is a game in particular that I can imagine that I can clean everything up and do all the side missions before I even beat the game.
Yep.
Now I probably won't because I have for the most part, honestly, I've got most of the landmarks and I think I have like 50 backpacks. I think I'm missing 5.
Yeah, that's exactly how I played.
The only thing I'm dragging my feet on is the fucking Taskmaster missions because I can't. Oh, the challenges are they just get on my nerves so bad.
Yeah. But no, you're right. You can do that. Now, the reason that I had a problem with it is that I was parts of the games that didn't have a sense of urgency by nature of where the story was going at that particular part, I would go ahead and go do that in between as I felt like the need. And definitely when you're swinging between areas. But then when something interesting would happen, I don't want it to force me to wait 5 minutes. I've already screwed around for 30 minutes. And then I go to this mission, which is interesting. Yep. And then directly after, I can't keep the pace up. They drop it for me. Now, that's not necessarily them not taking chances. That's more just a complaint with the game setup. I do think that they try to take chances in some way. I want to give the game some credit. Of course, they took chances in trying to pull from Spider-Man villains that a lot of people would not necessarily be familiar with if they're just surface Spider-Man fans.
But they also played it really safe.
Exactly, and I think that they also spent too much time trying. It's a mixed bag, right? They wanted to introduce Mr. Negative, which is somebody that a lot of people who like Spider-Man, unless you really do read the comics, you're not going to know who Mr. Negative is. Well, then they spent so much time because of the fact that they didn't think people were going to know who he was, trying to build him up just for him by the end to feel like he was set up too much and then not resolved on enough. And it's a mixed bag for them because in trying to take chances in certain areas, it kind of hurt the flow of the game and the pacing of the game. And then in other areas, they didn't take enough chances, which kept the pacing fine, but too predictable. And it's just, I don't know. It's starting a game, I think it's probably smart, and I do still say that I think that Spider-Man is the best starting game of a in this setup because I even think that it was stronger than Arkham Asylum, even though Arkham Asylum is really good, and it beats it out in a couple of areas. But in terms of giving you a whole feel, Spider-Man falls just short of Arkham City, and from just a few small things. It's amazing that they were able to pull that off with the first game and not the sequel. You know what I mean? And so that's amazing. They have a really solid foundation, and they could do some great things moving forward, and I hope they do that. And I hope that if they get the opportunity to make their own villain, that they really do go, you know what, guys? We're not going to fall back on someone else. We're going to make our own villain. Who would be a good villain? How are we going to stress something that's particular to how Spider-Man is and who Peter is as a character? How are we going to try and play off of those in ways that we don't feel like we've seen before, that are wholly original to us, and we're not working off of source material? Do what we want to do, and I hope that that's what we see. And I think the same thing with, like, they can easily, in these Harry Potter games that they're doing, they can easily make a fall flat story which has no real weight, and they're just like, hey, we want you to play in this world because you like Harry Potter and it's cool to mess around with spells and all the like creatures.
Destiny.
Yes,
like a Destiny 1 situation where the story's okay, but let's just play around the world.
Yes. Now, of course, the flip side of that is they could actually try and make a weighty story, and of course the first Harry Potter series has a weighty story across the whole span, and I like that. And I mean, if they want to try and do something like that, great. I mean, I really hope they do, but I don't want it to be derivative, I guess is what I want to use as a word. I don't want it to be so much sourced off of one particular thing that it ends up coming off unoriginal because it's just too derivative. It doesn't feel unique in any true sense. I think the only thing that Spider-Man really gave me as a really, truly unique feel was the suit and what the suits meant in the game. I feel like everything else I just was kind of par for the course. Like I kind of knew what to expect. I mean, it was all good. I liked Peter. I liked how they cast Peter. I liked the way that Spider-Man worked. I mean, he had the right attitude and stuff, but it just felt like, oh yeah, this is Spider-Man, but this is Spider-Man I've seen elsewhere. There's a difference between doing something that you've seen elsewhere and staying true to the character. They could have done something more original and still made you go when you're playing like, oh, this is definitely Spider-Man, but this is unique and different in its own right. Mm-hmm. So I don't know.
It's a long Spider-Man conversation.
It is. And I didn't quite mean for it to do that because I mean you could go a lot of places with it, but we ended up kind of talking about that in general with like Star Wars. Star Wars Force Unleashed, like we talked about, is one of those games that it took enough creative liberties while still trying to pull in and give you Easter eggs and things that you would like as a fan of the universe to where when you're playing it, it felt very rewarding. And it was like, this is really cool. And of course, it falls flat just a few little areas. But for the most part, it was like, man, they really understand what they're doing. And I think that partially that came from it being LucasArts who developed the game. Mm-hmm. And it was people who were very near and dear to the franchise as a whole anyway. But it may be... I mean, Insomniac did a great job, and I would not be scared to give them another game. It's just... There's a line of, I want you to push even further. But some of that comes down to Spider-Man and Batman, and I was impressed by Batman being able to do it because they're exhausted characters. It is very hard to be unique and original with a character who's been around for 60-plus years, who's been iterated on in every conceivable way. And I thought one thing that we talked about prior to doing this as we were loosely discussing the topic is Superman. And like, how do you make a compelling thing? Well, that's another character who's been around so long, and to try and keep him relevant, they have to keep doing these weird retcons and stuff like this, and making him more powerful and resetting the universes. And
the problem with, I'm not going to get down in it, I just want to make a statement. The problem with Superman now that I've noticed is there are two camps. I fall in the camp of, in general with the character, I want Clark Kent who's also Superman. Like, I want his whole thing to be like, I'm just a human. Like, I'm not a human, obviously, but I'm just a guy that I also happen to be Superman, and I'm gonna fuck up. Yeah. I can't be perfect like everyone thinks I am. But you also have the other camp. It's literally, I think, 50-50 or 60-40. The other camp that want Silver Age Superman. Like, Superman is Superman. He's the symbol of freedom. Like, get this Clark nonsense out of here.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and so that's where I think your hardest thing is going to go with Superman, just in general. Story, video games, anything.
It's superhero in general, and that'll be my last bit on this too. But I think that exactly what you're asking for is essentially what we also got in Spider-Man. But it's also, you expect it with superheroes because it's one of the only ways, as you continue to power up superheroes and make them kind of, you always, what makes superheroes fun is the overcoming adversity. It's what makes Dragon Ball Z cool. You can't beat them, suddenly you can, because, rallied together and pulled out that last ounce of strength or whatever. And that stuff is cool, but it starts to get to a point where it's hard to get too original, because the only way to make a compelling Superman story, definitely Superman, because of who he is as a character and how they've powered him and all these weird rules he has, is the only way you can really make a compelling story is to include Clark and then play off of the old paradigm of, no matter how strong and how powerful you are, you can't be everywhere at once. Mm-hmm. And that's how that's most great superhero stories based around that. When you watch Dark Knight, it pulls that off. When you play Spider-Man, it pulls that off. It's always just trying to balance things out. So eventually, the games are any game that tries to do that, because it is a compelling way to do it, is they're also going to start to feel old eventually. So I mean,
to end your topic in just in a general way, I think because of Arkham, and because really, I guess because of Arkham now, and seeing the example that was laid with Spider-Man, we're going to see, I think we're in an age now where these IPs, whether they're movies or already existing video games, are going to start getting more respect, because people, even in the mainstream, people know, hey, cash grabs aren't good enough anymore. And like Greg Miller has said this multiple times, games nowadays can't just be good or can't just be okay. Like, every game that comes out has to be great, or has to be really good to be able to be heard over the just volume of everything else.
There's a lot of stuff vying for your time, and a lot of it's quality. If you look at the release schedule from last year and this year, there's a ton of games, and they're all really good, or at least all of the big ones turned out to be really great. Definitely last year. Last year was a very heavy year for me.
Oh, this year's, man. Man. We're getting quality and quantity.
For the first time in what it feels like a long time, really. I don't think that there's ever been a period of gaming where there's been this many really good games. And it makes you kind of a weird critic, because everything starts to be so good that when something falls short of that, even though it's really good, you end up, like, that's kind of how I feel about my critiques on Spider-Man. It's like, why do I care that much? I mean, like, they're valid points, but, if this would have came out in this same form and been this good on early PS3, I would have been like, holy crap, you would have never said anything bad about it, because there wasn't comparable work necessarily going on in such abundance,
Well, so now, for having this renaissance of these games that coming out that you can get your hands on and play and be great, it's really making me kind of wish and think that why can't that always be the case?
Why can't you always just play a game because you're in the mood for it? Why do we have to have day one patches?
So prime example. Exactly. Well, prime example, and I guess this leads into my topic, is I have recently discovered or rediscovered a game from my childhood that I remember so fondly. And I actually want to give a shout out. It's thanks to OKB's podcast leaderboard, where they do top 10 lists. And the last episode was 3D platformers. And I tweeted at him when I finished, said, hey, he's like, just listen to the episode. I wanted to give a shout out to my two favorite ones. And then the response was, how the fuck could we forget that game? So the game in particular I'm talking about is I, Ninja.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Do you guys remember this game?
I do not. Maybe it's one of those weird things where once I see it, I'll remember it. But right now, no, it's not.
Probably will.
Not ringing a bell.
I'm going to send you.
I'm Googling.
Look at the cover art for it. So this game, I was like, oh my God, I forgot about it. And then I went to go look at gameplay, and I'm like, I remember everything about these levels. And I immediately was filled with excitement. I'm like, oh my God, like maybe I can find it on Steam and I can play it like that. No. Nope. And even if I could play it on PC, I can't play it on 10. I have to play it on Vista or something like that. Yeah. So like the only way I can go back and play this game is if I get a GameCube or a PS2 and buy a copy of it on there. And that's obviously not ideal. But this is a game that I do actually think truly is still a really good game. It's hard, it's really fun, and it gives you a drive and a motivation to actually play. And obviously I don't think in quantity-wise it fares up to the games that we have now. But like my two questions are, one, like, it's not really a question. I just wish there was an easier way for us to be able to play these catalog of games from our past. But my actual question is, what's one game from your respective past that you wish you could play that you can't?
All right, Brett, why don't you take it off first?
Oh, yeah. Wasn't taking it off.
Oh, man. See, this is a great question. This is one of those ones that just hits you and you're like, oh, man, I feel like I have an answer for this. But I try and think about it. One thing that's a little weird is I'm really, really big into collecting stuff. So I'm really big about keeping consoles. So I have like a backwards compatible PS3. I have a PS2 still. I have a PS1. So I can play any PlayStation catalog game that I want as long as I can basically get my hands on the game itself. If I didn't keep it or if it wasn't somehow digital across, I have a lot of PS1 games digitally on my PS3. So, I think about games that I just loved a lot as a kid, and it's just, you think about games that are hard to get nowadays, and a lot of the ones, when I really go back and think about it, even though I have it, because it's just, again, trying to buy it and find it, and I don't think it'd be that hard, but it's just, I wish it was easier, is Crisis Core, Final Fantasy Crisis Core. From the
that's a good
PSP
one.
days. And it came out in such a weird time, and this is why it's so hard, is that essentially, it came out in the PSP days before PSP started going digital, and Sony was ahead of the game and to their whatever you want to call it. It wasn't a good thing for them. I don't know why I'm brain farting right now, but anyway, they went all digital at a time where nobody else is ready to do that, and it wasn't really feasible with the PSP Go. So what you ended up seeing was a lot of games ended up skipping it. So up until you got the PS3 remaster for 2.5 that included Birth by Sleep and Kingdom Hearts. You could not play Kingdom Hearts on a PSP Go. You had to have an original PSP. It was the only way to do it. You couldn't play it digitally at all. They've fixed that with 2.8 at least. I don't know if they ever made 2.5 digital, but because of that, it made it hard to get the game. So Crisis Core is a game that is not available, even though the Vita could play it no problem. Because it was never available digitally, you can't buy it, because the only way that you can play PSP games on Vita are if they were digital and you just buy the digital copy and download it. So I've been playing it recently because I was able to get my hands back onto it, but I went a long time without it because of the fact that it just wasn't easy to get.
So I got...
Now, I do want to specify that these games are in a way easy to get, because you can just go to like a game exchange or a mom and pop and buy like a PS2 or a game.
Oh yeah,
but that's a hassle. Like, why can't I just play the games like how Xbox have their backwards compatibility?
So
yeah, exactly.
I got two really, really good ones. I'll save the best for last. But number one is The Suffering. Have you guys ever played that?
I've heard of it, but I haven't actually played it.
It's a third-person / first-person horror game back on the PlayStation 2. And so I think it's in the same time frame where like I could get it for PC, but I would have to have probably like a Vista or something like that, or I'd have to get an emulator in order to. So there'd be like multiple steps. So like you said, it's just a hassle, and it's like I don't know that much about computers in the first place. Yeah. So for me to play this game, I'd most likely have to just go out and get a PlayStation 2, and I don't know why, but I just really like that game, and I mean. Looking back on it, I mean, like, I can perfectly admit that it doesn't look that great. It looks kind of janky. I mean, not janky. I always use that word. It just looks kind of generic. That's what I want. It was a G word, so I got mixed. Yeah.
Sure.
But anyways, it looks kind of generic or whatever. But it actually it is like Metacritic. It's got an 80%. So I mean, it's not a horrible game. It's just. So I guess, but yeah, that one's really hard. And then the number one that's super hard, and I'm pretty sure the only way I can play it is if I get a PlayStation 1 version of it, and that's Brave Fencer Musashi.
Oh yes, I'm so glad you mentioned that. Actually, I love that game so much, and that the PS2 sequel did no form of justice for that game. But what a good game! I've know a number of people who are very keen on getting a remake of that game, and I actually think
if we
really
could get
cool
like a
do.
Final Fantasy VII-esque, remake, or even just like a Crash Bandicoot-esque remake of it, or something where it's literally the same geometry, but they just make it look pretty, like they did in Crash Bandicoot. That would be that would be great. I mean, I don't need I don't need
same level design, no more expansion.
They're going to be changing certain things, whether it be the geometry or something like that. But if they just took literally the same code, but then made it look pretty, perfect. And see, the thing is, this is a game you can't even get on, if I still have my PlayStation 3, and I've actually been playing some older games like Mega Man Legends, but Mega Man Legends, Mega Man
not
Legends
available.
I can get on the PlayStation Network 1 and 2. I can get Mega Man Legends. But Brave Fencer Musashi, no, I can't get that. I would have to go buy it. And if I have to go buy it, it's $30 or $40 for a PlayStation 1 game. Most of them are $10 now if you get it from the right spot. So that's definitely a hassle for me. And I actually, quick story here, I actually bought Brave Fencer Musashi, I want to say 4 or 5 years ago. And it was back when I actually played PlayStation 3. So this was before the PlayStation 4. So I guess maybe more like 6 or 7 years ago. But anyways, so I bought it, and I was ready to play it on my PlayStation. I paid the $30 for it. I paid premium price for it. And then for some reason, my disc reader would not read that particular type of PlayStation 1 game. I would be able to I think I could do black tops, and I could do regular tops, but I could not do the blue disc. And so that's what Brave Fencer Musashi was, and so I could not play the game. I even spent I want to say $80. So by the end of this, the $30 plus the $80, so I spent $110 so I could play this game. And even after getting it repaired and getting a brand new disc reader in there, it still wouldn't frickin' work. And so I haven't had the. Because, if I wanted to get, a PlayStation 2, for instance, it wouldn't be that hard, kind of like Nate was saying. It's not that hard. I mean, I could go to literally any pawn shop, but it's just after that, after going through all those steps of trying to play just that one game, I was just and so I haven't had the real desire to since then.
Yeah, it's the biggest thing you run into nowadays, especially I think probably more so with classic consoles like the NES, is if you're going to be able to for PS2s and GameCubes, they primarily used components, so you'll have to buy a converter piece for component to HDMI.
Mm-hmm.
It's not hard, but it's just additional steps. But to me, honestly, ever since I remembered that iNinja game, I've been watching gameplay, and I'm I think I just might do it, because this game,
it looks awesome. I've been watching gameplay too.
Yeah, everybody who's listening, just go watch the first part. Well, first off, it's got an amazing voice cast. I mean, Billy West is the protagonist. I mean, the guy who plays Philip J. Fry and Bugs Bunny, Elmer Fudd. I mean, it's hilarious. The game has a lot of really funny moments, and it's just a very unique, platformer kind of game. But yeah, everyone who's listening, do yourself a favor and look up the first 20 minutes or so, and this is a gem. This is a gem that I am now very depressed.
So you battle
that I can't
Pokemon?
play right now. Gem, GEM, dork.
Oh boy.
No, I don't battle Pokemon.
That's okay. The other joke I was gonna go to
What do
is
I look
who
like?
ninja?
I ninja.
IR Baboo or IR Baboon. Anyways, sorry. It's a deep cut there.
Okay.
Cartoon
Oh,
Network.
man.
What up?
Deep cut. Yeah. Cartoon Fridays.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think that's going to do the show for us today. So, the last thing we have to do, and usually we have our guest help us out with this, we're going to do a comic book club.
So, do you basically look for? I mean, does it need to be digital or
Yeah,
physical, or what do you do?
digital.
I mean, out of curiosity.
Yeah.
Digital. Okay. Well, it looks like I've never messed with Comixology, but I'm on it right now. Is it
Whichever one says unlimited, like that's the one that you'll be able to
do digitally,
read
correct?
for free. Well, no, read for free, basically.
Sure. Okay. Yeah, that's cool. That's what I was curious about. I'm going to go a completely weird direction here. This is because I am a big fan of music, and of course, they had a new album come out. I'm going to suggest everybody go read The Amory Wars, the Second Stage Turbine Blade, which is, if you like music and you've ever heard of them, Coheed and Cambria, it's the story behind their albums, and they are killer comics. And if you're a comic book fan and you've not messed with them, they have a great art style. They have a really cool story, and then you also have the added benefit of being able to read the comics and then go check out the music and be like, oh man, I see how they connect, or go hear the music first, like it hopefully, and then go back and read it and be like, oh, this all makes more sense that they are telling the story through the music. But it's a really cool story.
Go
too,
ahead and type that in, because that was a lot
where
of
I
words.
would go. The Amory Wars.
No, you type it.
AMORY.
Type it. Yeah, type it.
Oh, me?
Yes,
oh,
go to the docs.
am I going to this docs? I got this. I got this.
The moment I look at the art, like I can totally get Coheed and Cambria.
Okay, who the hell is Coheed
They are.
and Cambria?
Do you know? You probably know the song "Welcome
Yeah,
Home"?
probably.
You just don't realize it. It was
Yeah.
on. It was on the trailer for the animated movie 9. That's where a lot of people heard it. It was also in Rock Band 2, I think. But you know,
I'm not going to hum it just because I'm going to butcher it because it's very like kind of. Yeah, no, it's not that simple chords like that.
Not
It's,
such simpletons.
After the show, I'll play it for you. And you'll be probably like, oh,
yeah, you're gonna know it as soon as you hear it. You're gonna know it. It was a very big song in
You
like
would know big, wouldn't
2007.
you?
which I still have to see 9. I haven't seen.
Oh, 9's great. It's a good movie.
It's
Short,
on my
but
list. I
good.
just haven't seen it yet.
So
Okay,
there you
cool.
go. If you like, if you've never heard of Coheed, hopefully you
that's
like
actually
them.
that's perfect. I mean, something we've never heard about. We did Spider-Man last time because it was right around the same time that Spider-Man was coming out. So,
And it was
awesome.
great.
So yeah, the Amory Wars, the Second Stage Turbine Blade. See what I mean? That is a lot of freaking words. Okay, so we have it. It'll be in the description.
It is.
So if you're like me and it's like that's a lot of words, Nick. It's in the description below. So look at that and you can shut up. And you can join us on our Discord, and we have a whole segment where we talk about the comic books of the week. So that'll be for next week. We'll talk about it. So if you guys want to have a discussion about it, you have a discussion on Discord, and you might make it onto the show. All right. So that's going to be the show for us. Thank you so much, Brett, for joining us. Make sure to give everybody another chance to know where they can find you.
Sure, yeah, of course, man. Again, thanks for having me on. It's been fun. But you can find us on Triangle Squared. It's a podcast. You can find us on podcast services. You can find us on YouTube as well. We do it in video format for people who like that. You can subscribe to us over there. You can find us on Twitter at Triangle SQRD, on Facebook in the Triangle Squared, a PlayStation podcast group, and then email and various other ways. But we are pretty active on Twitter. It's our Twitter and Discord are our primary thing. So, yeah.
All right,
Thanks,
and
man.
Nate, how you doing? Yeah, good?
I'm doing great. I'm still sad about my ninja.
You'll get
It's
over
okay.
it.
It's okay, Nate.
Or you won't.
You'll get
and
it.
Either way, no one cares. So, all right. Thank you so much for joining us for Nerd the Third, where you can always talk nerdy to me.
All right, hold on a second. Let me go get a.
No,
I'm gonna go get a beer.
I want a beer too. Damn it.
OMJ. Oh man, it sounds like he's having some problems with his beer.
Yeah. I was having problems with his mom.
Oh yeah, I like you guys.
Oh, quite.
I can tell this is gonna be fun.
That is easily. You probably were talking, but I didn't have my headphones on.
I know.
We
oh my god,
knew
it was
it.
so funny. So I was with Kevin yesterday, and I invited Coach because he was the only one that was signed on yesterday. So we were getting into Dead by Daylight. Coach is like, "Oh, I don't have it downloaded or whatever." It's like, "Oh, all right, well, better luck next time or whatever." So then he leaves, and me and Kevin start going, "Oh God, what a fucking asshole!" Yeah, just a big bag of dicks, just a huge bag of dicks. All of a sudden, I'm still here, guys.
Oh boy.
So,
Bag of dicks.
So did you see me almost
Favorite
bust my
insult.
ass when I came back through the door?
No, I didn't see that.
Okay, so that was the third time today that I have hardwood floors, and I've been wearing socks all day. So I've been every chance been trying to do the slip thing. I opened the door and went through, and fucking like hard stopped on the floor. And so I went, we'll see what it is before each episode. It goes,
Okay, come on now. Come on.
What am I coming on?
Yeah, you are.
Hey, zing. Yeah, go ahead.
Hey everybody, and welcome back to Nerd to the Third, your stop for video games, movies, and nerd culture. What episode is this? I actually, like, now that I think of it, I haven't said the episode in actually a couple episodes, so maybe I should just keep that
you said
going.
You said it last episode.
I said it last time? Okay, well then it must have been one or two before that I don't remember saying it at all.